Hello friends, my name is Mohsen Raj. I've done my MD from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, and now I'm a dean student at the same institute. In this series of videos, I'll be sharing with you some of the strategies that you might consider using while you're preparing for these entrance exams. So, to consider the background of these entrance exams, we know that we have to prepare for 19 different subjects that we learned during MBBS, and then so this exam encompasses all those 19 subjects. So that's difficult. So something that you might have learned in first year MBBS, you might be asked 5 years later in the postgraduate entrance exam. Now, to further complicate the things is the limited number of seats that we have. So we have 50,000 to 100,000 or 1 lakh students preparing for the entrance exams, where the number of seats are limited, and particularly if you're preparing for central institutes like AIIMS, New Delhi, or PG, Chandigarh, then the competition is of course more severe. I myself gone through the states. I had good ranks in my postgraduate entrance exams. I had All India rank 16 in AIIMS exam, and I had All India rank 11 in PGI exam. And after doing my MD from AIIMS New Delhi, I subsequently appeared in DM entrance exams, and I was All India rank 1 in all 3 exams that I appeared. AIIMS, the exam conducted by AIIMS, or PGI Chandigarh, and NEET Super Specialty, I was All India rank 1 in all the 3 exams. So having an experience of quite a number of exams now, entrance exams, I would like to make this video series that help you prepare for such entrance exams, the postgraduate and also the super specialty entrance exams. The first video would be rather a general kind, where I tell you how to prepare for a subject in general. So any of your 19 subjects that you might be preparing right now. So how to prepare for what's my strategy to do it. And this plan would better work for a person who has maybe a year of preparation left, a year before he is supposed to appear in the exam. So to start, we have to set a timeline for every subject. So from this standpoint, we can consider these 19 subjects as being either major or minor. So subjects like pathology, general medicine, or obstetrics, or maybe preventive and social medicine, the major subjects, because they contribute much more questions to the exact paper than subjects like maybe ENT or maybe orthopedics. So they're minor subjects. It doesn't mean that the specialty is a small specialty, it's just the number of questions that appear from that particular subject. So the first strategy is to set an appropriate time limit for a subject. So what I used to follow, or what I suggest, is that for a major subject like pathology or like medicine, set a period of 15 days, or at the max maybe 18 or 20 days for covering that completely. And for a minor subject, set a time limit of 7 days, or maybe at the maximum 10 days. See, you may have fallen in love with a particular subject during your MBBS, but here is an exam where there are 19 subjects and you're supposed to do good in every subject. You're supposed to get at least 80% marks in every subject. So every subject is important. You have to devote time to each and every one of these 19 subjects. So giving time to every single subject rather than spending months on one single subject. That's important. So that's the rule number 1 that we have to know, that we have to cover, we have to get 80% marks in every subject. We cannot master just single subject and leave some areas as weak. We have to be relatively good everywhere in every single of these 19 subjects. So once you have set your timeline, the next thing of course is to collect the resources for a particular subject. Well, what I refer to here is the various guidebooks or review books that are available for all of the subjects. So those are your primary reference materials. I am not in favor of coaching institutes. I have not attended one during my MD or DM entrance. I have not attended any one of those coaching institutes. But I suggest that you get a reference book, a review book for a subject that you're preparing for. Now the problem is there are so many in the market. You have even books on ophthalmology or maybe pathology written by someone who is an orthopedician. Now how would he master concepts of pathology or biochemistry to write books on that? I don't think you should follow that strategy. But I won't be mentioning a particular list of books, but I would suggest that you prefer a review book that is written by an author who is from the same specialty. Pathology by someone who is a pathologist. Biochemistry from someone who is a biochemistry teacher. Or medicine from someone who is a medicine teacher, not someone who is teaching orthopedics. Don't read a medicine book from him. That's obvious. There's a list of books on your screen right now that you might, there are examples of such books written by the authors of the same specialty. Now, what about the standard textbooks that we read during our, MBBSc? Some of you may have fallen in love with Pathology by Robin. Some of you may have fallen in love with Harrison Medicine. But they sort of take a backseat while you're preparing for the entrance exams. So in a limited amount of time, you refer to the review books. And these standard books you might consider using for some of the very high yield areas. And especially if you are preparing for the image-based questions. So if you're preparing for an exam that contains pathology image, so why not check the Robbins for all the image that it contains? You don't have to read the text part, but you can consider image from the book. Because if an image is to be used in an exam, it's most likely to come from the standard book. So you don't have to read the standard text while you're preparing for these entrance exams, but you should consider referring to them while you're looking or preparing for the image-based questions, or maybe for the high-yield tables that you might consider from these textbooks. So the next thing that you would like to consider is what is trending in that particular subject. See, I encourage you to read thoroughly, but it is of course not possible to cover each subject from cover to cover, line to line. No. It's not possible. So I suggest that you take out the previous 5-year questions that have been asked from a subject. If you're preparing pathology right now, take out or attempt questions that have been asked in the previous 5 years in various entrance exams. So that tells you a couple of things. That tells you what are the high yield areas in that particular subject. And for that, you don't have to attend a coaching institute for that. Just look at previous 5-year papers. See what is being asked, see the areas that are being frequently tested. That's it. That's the most important thing. You don't need someone from a particular coaching center to tell you that. See, they're not predicting future questions. They're not setting the question papers. Rather, all they can do is they can analyze the questions that have come in the previous exams. The second thing that I encourage you to do, that once you identify the high yield areas from that particular subject, mark them on your book that you're about to read. So this highlights two things. One, the bare minimum that you have to read from that subject. These hot areas, high yield areas, the trending topics from that subject, that's bare minimum. Second, those are the areas that you have to read repeatedly. See, you might read that subject full, maybe once, but those high yield areas you have to read repeatedly. So now once you have highlighted the hot areas, the trending topics in that particular subject, I encourage you to spend the next maybe 10 days in case of a major subject. Read those areas thoroughly. All headings, subheadings in that area. If a question has been asked in a particular area, read that area completely and not just that particular subheading. Okay. One is that. The second thing, see, if you identify so many questions, for example, in a subject, maybe pathology, are being asked from the chapter on cell injury, consider reading that chapter thoroughly. And if you're considering maybe a chapter like musculoskeletal system, questions are not being asked from that chapter, read it quickly. It's obvious, it's quite obvious, and you would of course follow these things. Now, once you go through the questions in that particular maybe chapter or a subject, you'll find that these books have a lot of multiple choice questions, even questions that have been asked, I think, 2 decades back. Of course, you don't have to overburden yourself with those questions. I suggest that you go through the questions that have been asked in the previous 5 years, or at the max, maybe 7 or 8 years. And such questions are more likely to reappear at the exams, and those are the areas that are more important than something that has appeared 20 years back, and you don't want to waste your time in reading that question. Next is a very important thing. It is to test yourself. See, now you may have spent 15 days in reading this major subject. I encourage you to test yourself on that subject after those 15 days. Now, this is where the current online platforms may be of use. You may consider using maybe something that gives you a question paper of that subject and which mimics an actual exam, 200 full questions, 3-hour time duration, covering that subject. That's wonderful. So that offers you 2 advantages. One, you're now doing what is a scientifically proven method of revisions, an active recall. So you're attempting a question paper in an exam-based scenario. You're using the information that you've learned in the previous 15 days, actively recalling it. That's in a way learning. That's a good way to learn the things. Second, once you go through the explanation of that paper, and I encourage you that at the end of 15 days, you're prepared for the exam, you spend next couple of days in extensively reading the explanation of those 200 questions that you might have attempted. So those 200 questions, the explanation of those 200 questions, that would be another mini revision just at the end of your 15 days. So those 200 questions would cover most important areas from that full subject. So 15 days of full-time reading of that subject, an exam at the end, a couple of days of revision of those questions, and that's pretty much you have to do for a major subject. Next is to use flashcards. There's no particular way to make them. You may use those sticky notes, whatever way you like. What I used to do is to take a screenshot or to take a picture of a particular table or a figure or an algorithm or a mnemonic that I would believe that is very important for the exam. So take a photo, store it in your phone, store it in a particular folder, store it in your drive, so that just prior to the actual exam, you can review all these screenshots or all these sticky notes that you have collected over time, because those are high yield areas that you have collected over 1 full year of preparation. You can spend, they'll be very useful just prior to your actual final exam. So that brings us to the end of maybe 15 to 20 days. So you've spent 15 days in reading a major subject. You've spent another couple of days in reading the questions from that subject, rereading, or you have tested yourself in an exam of that particular subject. So it's 20 days of full-time studies. I then encourage you to take a break. Maybe go for a picnic with your family or your friends. Enjoy for a couple of days before you join the next subject. So that makes sure that you don't get overburdened. So it's absolutely okay that after 2 full weeks or maybe 20 days of preparation, you take a break of a couple of days where you let your mind again get rejuvenated, your energy to build up. And now one final point, it might be a case that you tried for 15 or maybe 21 days, but your major subject is not yet over. You're still left with some part of it. Well, I suggest that you stop there, prepare for the next subject, because you have allotted a particular time to that major subject or maybe a minor subject. 7 days have gone for a minor subject, or 15 days have gone for a major subject. Some part of it is left. I suggest you move to the next subject, because remember the rule, you have to prepare, you have to score at least 80% in each subject. So maybe in the next revision, you'll read that, whatever part is left. So with that, the strategy of making a timeline, using your resources properly, forming a strategy, you should be able to cover all of your 19 subjects in maybe in a timely fashion in your first reading. Subsequent revisions will of course be more precise and not so extensive. Now, before I conclude this video, I want to give you a thumb rule number 2 that I used to follow in my preparation. It's a so-called 3-hour rule. Remember, most of the exams, they're of 3-hour duration. So I want you to, like while you're studying or while you're testing yourself, you test yourself for this 3-hour duration. You study in breaks of 3 hours duration. Don't read for just half an hour and then just go away from your books. Don't attempt any book for just maybe 20 minutes and then you do something else. No. The exam day requires you to have very tight focus on your computer screen in front of you. The exam. So it is better that you practice that 3-hour focus sessions daily in your daily while you're preparing for these exams. So you're testing yourself from a book, you're reading material from a book. Do it for 3 long hours. Take a break afterwards as much as you want, but your sessions should be 3 hours long, or as long as your exams want your focus to be, there at your exam. I thank you for watching the video, and I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel if you prefer to watch more such content in future. Thank you.